Welcome to the COBOL-IT Learning Center. Getting started with the COBOL-IT Compiler Suite on a Linux or UNIX platform. In this module, we will introduce the key concepts associated with compiling and running COBOL programs. Using a simple application, we will review important compiler flags and environment variables. We will also review how the compiler locates copy files, data files and subprograms. Finally, we will review some important tracing functions provided by the COBOL-IT Compiler Suite. Let's get started. Prerequisites. Before beginning the Getting Started with COBOL-IT exercises, the COBOL-IT Compiler Suite Enterprise Edition must be installed on your Linux or UNIX computer. For guidance, see the COBOL-IT e-learning module titled Installing COBOL-IT Compiler Suite Enterprise Edition on a Linux or UNIX platform. For our exercises, we are using the RESMAIN application, which consists of two COBOL programs named RESMAIN.cbl and rescheck.cbl. We also have scripts, in which we will show the usage of compiler flags and environment variables. The RESMAIN application also has a directory structure that we will use to reinforce key concepts about locating copy files and data files. Buildit.sh is a script file designed to compile and run the programs in the RESMAIN application. The build process creates object files in the object directory, and list files in the lst directory. Running the application creates files in the data directory, and accesses the data in those files. We will examine the statement trace and file trace shell scripts later, when reviewing COBOL-IT's tracing capabilities. Let's begin by examining the buildit shell script. This is the buildit shell script. The buildit shell script allows us to compile and run the RESMAIN application. It is important to understand the usage of each of the compiler flags and runtime environment variables in this script. We will begin by examining the compiler flags. The compiler flags are seen in the command lines used to compile resmain.cbl and rescheck.cbl. Let's look at these command lines closely. COBOL-C is the COBOL-IT compiler. The capital I compiler flag informs the compiler where the copy files are located. In our sample, the copy files are located in a subdirectory named copy. The G compiler flag adds additional information to the compiled object that is required by tracing functions. The O compiler flag determines the name and location of the compiled object. In our sample, the compiled object is generated in a subdirectory named object. The T compiler flag causes a listing file to be created. In our sample, the listing file is created in a subdirectory named lst. Now, let's look at the runtime environment variables. In order to run the RESMAIN application, we must set the COBOL library path and COBOL file path environment variables. The COBOL library path environment variable informs the runtime where the compiled objects are located. This information is needed by the runtime when it starts the application, and when it calls subprograms. The COBOL file path environment variable informs the runtime where the data files are located, and where to create new files. Our application calls a subprogram, and references data files. So let's examine these functions more closely by looking at the source code. First, the call subprogram. Calling a subprogram. The RESMAIN application includes a call to a subprogram named rescheck. In our sample, compiling rescheck.cbl creates a shared object called rescheck.so. The call statement does not require that you include the extension of the called program. The call rescheck statement will look for rescheck.so in the COBOL library path, load it into memory, and execute the program. Now, let's review how data files are handled. Locating data files. The RESMAIN application references an indexed file called reswords and a line sequential file called reslist.txt. The COBOL-IT indexed file system is a dual file system. As a result, when you create an indexed file called reswords, two files are created. The two files are named reswords.dat and reswords.idx. Reswords is created in the directory named by the COB file path environment variable. If there is no COB file path environment variable, reswords is created in the current directory. reslist.txt is created by the RESMAIN application in the data subdirectory. File I/O statements use the COB file path environment variable to locate these data files. Now, let's review how the copy files are located by the compiler. Locating copy files. Select clauses and FD clauses in the RESMAIN application are stored in copy files in a subdirectory named copy. As a result, the compiler requires the use of the I compiler flag to indicate where they are located. The SL and FD extensions are not default extensions for copy files, so it is necessary to use the full file name in the copy statement. Now, let's take a look at the buildit shell script one more time. This is the buildit shell script. We will run buildit.sh from the command line to compile and run the RESMAIN application. Buildit.sh compiles the sample programs, and sets the necessary runtime environment variables. Finally, the runtime, COBOL-IT run, initiates the runtime session. The runtime will load the compiled object named resmain.so from the object directory and launch the application. RESMAIN is a reserved word check. At the prompt, type a word. RESMAIN calls rescheck to check if the word is a reserved word. RESMAIN then reports whether the word is reserved or not. Type X to exit. We have now reviewed basic compiler flags and environment variables. We have seen how to locate copy files, data files, and subprograms. Let's go a little further now. Let's examine COBOL-IT's file tracing capabilities using the file trace shell script. This is the file trace shell script. The file trace shell script sets two additional environment variables. COBOL's file trace causes the runtime to write file tracing information when file I/O operations are executed. COBOL file names the file to which the tracing information is written. Let's look at these environment variables more closely. Running a file trace. The COBOL file environment variable is required if you are doing a file trace. We have set the value of COBOL file to COBOL.txt. COBOL.txt will be created in the current working directory. We have set COBOL file trace to Y. Now, let's run the file trace shell script and examine the results. With the COBOL file trace environment variable set, information about file I/O operations will be written to the COBOL file as the program runs. Let's take a look at it. COBOL.txt contains the results of the file trace. In our sample, you can see how the runtime uses COBOL file path to locate the existent files reswords.dat and reslist.txt. If your application had produced a file error, this would help you determine the cause of the error. When you have finished examining the COBOL file, delete it. It is usually best to create a new COBOL file with each new runtime session. We have now seen how you can use the COBOL file trace and COBOL file environment variables to capture file trace information. Next, we will take a look at the statement trace shell script, and see how statement tracing information can be captured. The statement trace shell script. The statement trace shell script allows us to generate a statement trace by using the G and F trace all compiler flags, and the COBOL file environment variable. Let's look at these compiler flags more closely. The ftrace all compiler flag requires the G compiler flag. The G compiler flag adds extra information to the compiled object for purposes of debugging and running statement traces. The ftrace all compiler flag causes a statement trace to be written to COBOL file. Let's quickly review the runtime environment variables required for our exercise. We will use the COBOL library path, COB file path, and COBOL file environment variables in this exercise. The COBOL file environment variable is required if you are doing a statement trace. As seen before, the COBOL library path and COB file path are required for locating compiled objects and data files. Let's run the application while creating a statement trace. Using the G and F trace all compiler flags causes a statement trace to be generated. Output will be written to the COBOL file as the program runs. Let's take a look at it. COBOL.txt contains a trace of every COBOL statement executed by the COBOL-IT runtime. The statement name, section information, and line number can be very helpful in isolating a problem. We have now seen how you can use the G and F trace all compiler flags to capture statement trace information in the COBOL file. In this module, we introduced key concepts associated with compiling and running a COBOL program. Using a simple application, we reviewed important compiler flags and environment variables. We also reviewed how the compiler locates copy files, data files and subprograms. Finally, we reviewed some important tracing functions provided by the COBOL-IT Compiler Suite. For more detailed information, and the very latest reference documentation, please visit the doc folder under your COBOL-IT home directory. We encourage you to continue using the COBOL-IT online training program. Thank you.